So just brief recap here. Uh, so this chapter, like when Krishna saw Arjuna full of compassion, like his mind depressed, and Arjuna was having tears. Arjuna was very emotional. Krishna started to speak. He started with the chastising word like Anarya. He used the word Anarya and he gave Kashmalam, from where you have come, this pretty weakness of the heart. And then he addressed him with the word Krabyam, like important. And then Shudra, he used all these words to basically prod Arjuna. Like, and also he's showing, Krishna is also showing his, surprise. How come like usually Krishna's divine presence, these qualities are not, should not come, but these weakness of heart and all that Arjuna was exhibiting on the battlefield. So Krishna, that's why showed the surprise from where it has come unto you. Then further he addressed him, O killer of enemies, right? O killer of Madhu. Now Arjuna is asking, like, as you killed the demon Madhu, so you also kill the demon of my doubt. Because Arjuna was confused how he can kill the respectables like Bhishma and Drona. Like, one side is his grandfather and and spiritual master. He is giving the logic, like, can Krishna kill his own grandfather or spiritual master Sandipani Muni or grandfather Ugrasena? Arjuna gave further the reasoning that it's better for me to beg, than to kill the great souls like Bhishma and Drona, who should never be, even what to speak of killing them. Even verbally, one should not disrespect them. So, and then Arjuna exhibited various qualities which qualified him to receive this transcendental knowledge. And that's why in verse 7 that we were discussing yesterday, not yesterday, I mean last week, there Arjuna expressed very clearly. Maybe you can share my slide, Prabhuji. The slide number 19.
Okay, let me share first.
Yeah. Basically, while you share, I'll keep talking. I mean,
Yep.
there Arjuna is saying, like, Arjuna was saying, I'm confused about my duty, right? And I have lost all bodily composure because of miserly weakness. Shudra Hridaya Dorbalyam. So Karpanya Dosho, the Karpanya Dosho has come. Karpanya means miserly weakness has come into Arjuna. And that's why in that state of mind he is confused and he is surrendering to Krishna. So we discuss like material perplexities, how they come in our life, day-to-day life, and how we should deal in those situations. And we mentioned that one should approach a bona fide spiritual master to understand the absolute truth and to get out of that problem that we experience, or when our intelligence fail, our mind is not stable. That time we have to seek higher guidance from the higher spiritual being. Either it can be a sage or spiritual master or scriptures. We look the different definitions of miser, kripana and brahmana. Like Arjuna was having this kripana kind of weakness, miserly weakness, under which one thinks oneself associated with the body and thinks of only the bodily relatives or near ones, dear ones, as all in all. But that's not the case of a brahmana who is intelligent and who uses this human body like sharira to perform the dharma. That's what we discuss. So now the verse 2.8 is where Krishna will start to speak, and let's go and read this verse 2.8. I'll start with reading 2.8 Sanskrit while you display the verse, Prabhu. So 2.8, it's further Arjuna is saying actually, Nahi prapashyami mamanupadhya yashokam uchoshanam indriyanam avapya bhuma asapatnam radham rajyam suranam apichadhipatyam. So translation, I can find no means to drive away this grief which is drying my senses. I will not be able to dispel it even if I win a prosperous, unrivaled kingdom on earth. with sovereignty like the demigods in heaven. So now Arjuna is like in this verse, we'll see how he's further explaining the intensity of the emotion, the grief that he's feeling. I'll request someone of you can read the purport. It's a bit long purport. Maybe 3% can read it. So first person can read till first two paragraph, and then next two paragraph and last two paragraph, like that. There are 6 paragraph. We can divide equally. Someone like to volunteer for the first two paragraphs?
I can go for it.
Okay, please.
I, Although Arjuna was putting forward so many arguments based on knowledge of the principles of religion and moral codes, it appears that he was able to solve his real problem without the help of the spiritual master, Lord Sri Krishna. He could understand that his so called knowledge was useless in driving away his problems, which were drying up his whole existence. And it was impossible for him to solve such perplexities without the help of a spiritual master like Lord Krishna. Academic knowledge, scholarship, high position, etc., are all useless in solving the problems of life. Help can be given only by a spiritual master like Krishna. Therefore, the conclusion is that a spiritual master who is 100% Krishna conscious is a bona fide spiritual master, for he can solve the problems of life. Lord Chaitanya said that one who is a master in the science of Krishna consciousness, regardless of his social position, is a real spiritual master. किबा विप्रा किबा न्यासा शूद्र केना नाया यही Krishna tattva sai guru haya. It does not matter whether a person is a vipra, learned scholar in Vedic wisdom, or is born in a lower family, or is in the renounced order of life. If he is master in the science of Krishna, he is a perfect and bona fide spiritual master. So, without being a master in the science of Krishna consciousness, no one is a bona fide spiritual master. It is also said in the Vedic literature, Satkarma Nipno Vipro Mantra Tatra Visadharha Ashvashno Gurur Nasyat
Vaishnava Guru Natya.
Vaishnava Swaha Pako Guru. A scholarly Brahmana expert in all subjects of Vedic knowledge is unfit to become a spiritual master without being a Vaishnava or expert in the science of Krishna consciousness. But a person born in a family of a lower caste can become a spiritual master if he is a Vaishnava or Krishna consciousness. Padma Purana.
Maybe someone else can continue from the problems of material existence. Ramakant, would you like to continue?
Okay, Prabhu.
Okay, please.
The problem of material existence, birth, old age, disease, and death cannot be counteracted by accumulation of wealth and economic development. In many parts of the world, there are states which are replete with all facilities of life, which are full of wealth and economically developed, yet the problem of material existence are still present. They are seeking peace in different ways, but they can achieve real happiness only if they consult Krishna or the Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam, which consists of the science of Krishna. Though through the bona fide representative of Krishna, the man in Krishna consciousness, if economic development and material comfort could drive away one's lamentation of family, social, and national or international inbratities, then Arjuna would not have said that even an unrivaled kingdom on the earth or supremacy like that on the demigod in the heavenly planet would be unable to drive away his lamentations. He sought, therefore, refuge in Krishna consciousness, and that is the right path of peace and harmony. Economic development and supremacy over the world can be finished at any moment by the cataclysm of the material nature. Even elevation into the higher planetary situation, as a man are now seeking on the moon planet, can also be finished at one stroke. The Bhagavad Gita confirmed that Ishne Punne Marteya
Shine punne marthe lokam
Lokam
vishanti.
Vishanti. When the results of the pious activities are finished, one falls down again from the peak of the happiness to the lowest status of the life. Many politicians of the world have fallen down in that way, since downfall only constitutes more cautious for lamentations. Therefore, if we want to curb lamentation of good, then we have to take shelter of Krishna. As Arjuna is seeking to do, so Arjuna asks Krishna to solve his problem definitely. That is the way of Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. So basically, what we are seeing here is Arjuna is reconfirming his complete dependence and faith on Krishna. That's why he is saying that I find no other means to drive away this grief. Any Shastra or any person, I don't find anybody. He's saying, even if I get victory or I get opulence, this grief will still not go away. This lamentation is so strong that even further Arjuna says that even if I get unrivaled kingdom on earth, even the demigods, what to speak of them, like the kingdom of heaven, nothing can drive away this grief. So this, you can see that Arjuna is making here the comments based on a knowledge of religious principle, right? He's saying how uh, even people aspire for, different kind of happiness, which are also mentioned in the scripture. Despite you have all those, but when you are in such emotional turmoil, like those, that does not really help. You need counseling at that time. You need guidance at that time, and that's why he is seeking only Krishna or his here he Krishna himself directly. But for our case, either Krishna or his bona fide representation. When we are confronted with such emotional breakdown, we need those persons to help us come out of that emotional dilemma. Now, maybe Prabhu, you can bring up the slide, 2021. Yeah. So, like we said, doesn't matter what kind of education we have, how many degrees, PhDs we have, whatever our scholarship we have, or whatever the material position we may have. But when these particular material perplexities comes, or when these kind of challenging emotional situations come, they really does not help, because we feel we might have experienced that when such situation happens, like our intelligence is drained out, the brain loses the capacity to think, to decide. The intelligence is dysfunctional. So there is another example is there, but not directly in this context, but in other context. How Karna, he was having qualities as a Kshatriya. He was arch rival to Arjuna, right? And he had knowledge of so many divine celestial weapons. But simultaneously, he also had the curse from his spiritual master only. That at the time when you need this knowledge in most, you'll forget them. So, for the case of Karna, he forgot it, all the knowledge that he had, just um, just because of the curse that you can see apparently from outside. But in our situations, when those tough situations comes, even though we may have sometime even some, I may be having some weapon, but when that challenging situation come, person even sometimes forget. It's so, and especially here, Arjuna is not just is not forgetting because of a fear factor. He's his fear is not for personal self. His fear is for losing his dear ones. That's the situation. So, and that's why he's in that precarious situation. He's seeking to Krishna, and then he's like here Prabhupada explaining the purport. Like, does not matter how many economic development you do. Like these days, we have so many facilities. You can delay the aging, right? You can have as many material facilities that you need. They are automating so many things. Things are becoming easier, but these cannot solve us for our emotional breakdown. Rather, more emotional breakdown is happening, more technological development is there, because less the human contact is becoming, less we are having interaction these days. Even people like, you have a good friend, in my time will go and meet the person and talk to him face to face. But these days either people will text, even though sometimes, what to speak of people, even I have heard that husband and wife in next room, or maybe down floor, they are texting and talking like that. This is becoming more and more precarious day by day. We are becoming more and more dependent on material facilities, but these things have an impact on our emotional health. So when you have emotional dilemma, you're going through emotional difficulty, at that time material solution will not help. Like if somebody is how to say, is hungry, and you give him a nice bed to sleep, so it's a physical comfortable, materially comfortable bed. But if the person is hungry, you don't feed the person cannot sleep. First person need to be fed, his hunger need to be satisfied. Only then you can take care of his physical comforts. But here, the discomfort that person is having because of hunger, that has to be satisfied first. So for emotional problem, spiritual solution is needed. For physical problem, material solution is needed. So that we have to understand. So here, Arjuna, being supremely intelligent person, he is playing the part of a person in the illusion, and he is explaining, he's showing us the right path, like what to do when these kind of emotional situations come. So he's saying that one has to, when one need really the happiness and come out of this distress, he need to seek the spiritual solution, need to take shelter of the spiritual master, need to take shelter of the scriptures like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. So what else can we? So yeah, another point I was saying, like physical protection is needed. I'm not saying, like I mentioned, it's not needed, but just physical to me is both emotional level, psychical level, and spiritual level. That's a complete protection we need. We don't need just the material comforts. We need comforts for our emotional and our spiritual needs. So whenever there is a conflict in those situations, like when one is emotionally torn down, like a boss with his subordinate, or a husband and a wife, so just physical comfort may not help at that time, because the emotional torment that a person go through is so severe. So physical protection really does not help. Another example I gave you from scripture, I gave you one example of like when person is hungry, you give him a nice bed to sleep. Another is Chitraketu Maharaj, that's there in Srimad Bhagavatam. He was a very great king. He had so many queens, but he had no child, and he was very disturbed because of that. So that's the nature of the material world. You may have so many of all the things, but if one particular thing is missing, that it can make you so much miserable. So here Maharaj Chitraketu, despite having so many queens, despite having such an opulent kingdom, he was uh, he was feeling emotionally unhappy because he did not had a heir to whom he will inherit the kingdom. So love, sometimes people define love just an emotion. No, love is not just emotion, it's also spiritual. We get emotion about spiritual things and material things both. But when emotions about the spiritual things, they brings us closer to Krishna, whereas emotions about the material things, they takes us away from Krishna. And by being closer to Krishna, that help us to rise up in our constitutional position. But emotion toward material things, they bring us down. So that's the like essence of this verse. Now let's read 2.9. Okay. Sanjaya Uvacha Emam Muktva Rishikesham Gudakesha Parantapa Nayotsya iti Govinda Uktva Tushnim Babhuvaha. So, translation and purport. Sanjaya said, having spoken thus, Arjuna, chastiser of enemies, told Krishna Govinda, I shall not fight, and fell silent. Purport. Dhritarashtra must have been very glad to understand that Arjuna was not going to fight and was instead leaving the battlefield for begging profession. But Sanjay disappointed him again in relating that Arjuna was competent to kill his enemy, Parantapa. Although Arjuna was for the time being overwhelmed with false grief due to family affection, he surrendered unto Krishna, the supreme spiritual master, as a disciple. This indicated that he would soon be free from false lamentation resulting from family affection and would be enlightened with perfect knowledge of self realization of Krishna consciousness and would then surely fight. Thus, Dhritarashtra's joy would be frustrated since Arjuna would be enlightened by Krishna and would fight to the end. So this is again showing further what Arjuna did when he had that emotional breakdown. He's addressing to Krishna, now I have this Karpanya dosha. Then further he explained like how it cannot, even if I gain the kingdom and all that, but this grief will not be satisfied. That's why he's surrendering to Krishna. And then here it's further explaining the word used is for Arjuna is Parantapa, chastiser of the enemies. Now, why this chastiser of the enemy is becoming cold now on the battlefield? That's why this particular word has a significance here. And then the word used for Krishna is the Govinda. So Govinda means Go means the senses, and Vinda means one who gives pleasure to the senses. Go also means the cows, and Govinda means the master of the cows, or one who gives pleasure to the cows. So these names have also very significance. How Sanjay is saying to Dhritarashtra, like Arjuna is the chastiser of enemy, so don't think that he will leave the battle. It's only a temporary situation, and Krishna is the Govinda, or the master of our senses. And now Arjuna is by surrendering to Krishna, it's for sure that Arjuna will regain his zeal for fighting. In fact, both are Ishas. Krishna is supreme Isha. Arjuna is called Gudaka Isha and Paranatapa. These two words are used, right? And Krishna is the supreme Ishwar. So Arjuna Gudakesha is used because he is the one who has control over his sleep. And he is also, Arjuna is Parantapa, like I mentioned, chastiser of the enemy. So by getting enlightenment from Krishna, Arjuna will again regain his fighting spirit of Parantapa. That's what the theme is. So this is the Krishna consciousness movement Prabhupada is mentioning. Like when we are in lamentation, then for the good we take shelter of supreme authority. Here the supreme authority is Sri Krishna himself, who's the Lord. So let's see the once again the practical application of section section verses number 2.7 to 2.9. So if you can bring the next slide, Prabhu. Yeah, so this we already discussed, like how Sanjay informed three effects of surrender in Arjuna that are manifested. I already said he will be enlightened, freedom from false lamentation, and reinstate in his duty of fighting. Like Arjuna will no longer be silent. So let's go to the next slide. Yeah. So practical application of this section, these three verses 2.7 to 2.9, when Arjuna is surrendering, is that independently we cannot solve all the material perplexities. Does not matter how much academic qualification, how many degrees we have, or how many facilities, how many uh, well protected we may be, well situated we may be materially, but we cannot solve ourselves. Like when somebody is in the Kichad, what is Kichad? I don't know in English. It's a mud where if you go inside, you keep going inside. If you try more, you go more inside. So if somebody is fallen into that, he cannot come out on his own. He need help of the supreme authority. And how we take that help? By calling out loudly to supreme authority, which here for Arjuna is Krishna, to elevate this pain and despondency. So now we'll go to verse 10. We'll read Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 10. So if you can bring chapter 2, verse 10. Yeah. Tamuvacha Rishikesha Prahasan Eva Bharata Senyorubhayor Madhye Vishidantam Idam Vacha. Someone can read translation and purport. Yamuna Jivan Prabhu like to read?
True. Translation. O descendant of Bharat, at that time Krishna, smiling in the midst of both the armies, spoke the following words to grief-stricken Arjun. Purport. The talk was going on between intimate friends, namely Rishikesh and the Gudakesh. As friends, both of them were on the same level, but one of them voluntarily became a student of the other. Krishna was smiling because a friend had chosen to become a disciple. As Lord of all, he always in the superior position as the master of everyone, and yet Lord agrees to be a friend, a son, a lover, or a lover for the devotee who wants him in such a role. But when he was accepted as the master, he at once assumed the role and talked with a disciple like the master, with gravity as it is required. It appears that the talk between the master and the disciple was openly exchanged in the presence of both the armies, so that all were benefited. So the talks of Bhagavad Gita are not for any particular person, society, or community, but they are for all, and friends or enemies are equally entitled to hear them.
Yeah. So this is again, it shows the state of mind of Krishna. Like even on the battlefield, Krishna is still, he's not perplexed, he's not affected. He's speaking smilingly. And Krishna does not start giving instructions without being asked. When Arjuna was as we were seeing in the previous verses, Arjuna is speaking, expressing himself. But Krishna was giving generic thing, but did not give any personal instruction to Arjuna. But only when in 2.7, Arjuna is surrendering, right? Arpanya dosopahata savava prichhami tvam dharma sammudha cheta. Yashreyasya nishchitam bruhitan me shishyasteham sadhimantam prapannam. When Arjuna did that prapannam, surrender, like I am becoming your shishya sadhiman, and now you instruct me, right? Then Krishna will start to give the instructions. But before, another regarding this instruction only. Uh, if instruction, one should give like personal instruction only when one is asked. If not, then instruction can backfire on us. Like if somebody is not asking from anything from us, like our opinion, if you start giving opinion, it can create problem. So one should be very careful to give advice freely. Krishna is showing from his example that he was not speaking much, he was just listening. As you can see, all these verses before were spoken by Arjuna or Sanjaya, like explaining. But now Krishna will be speaking, and before speaking, and he starts to speak when Arjuna has surrendered, like I mentioned. So now he will not give like talks here and there. He will directly come to the point. But before coming there, Krishna is smiling. Krishna is not smiling on the Arjuna precarious situation. Oh, how, what kind of person he is. But Krishna is smiling because there is a relationship change. There is a dynamic change. As Prabhupada mentioned in the purport of this verse, that a friend is now becoming a disciple and another friend is now becoming a spiritual master. So that's why the Krishna became little, smiling. And Krishna will now, the more serious talk will happen, because the relationship of friendship is not very it's serious, but the talks are not very serious. You can joke around, fool around, and do all kind of things. But when you accept someone as spiritual master and you as his disciple, then the talk is more serious, it's more meaningful. So let's see now verse, next verse. श्रीभगवानुवाच अशोचयान् अन्वशोचस्त्वं प्रज्ञवादांश भाषसे गतासून् अगतासून् च नानुशोचन्ति पंडिताः. Translation and purport. So there, important point to mention there is, this starts with Shri Bhagwan Uvacha. So there is no word like Krishna Uvacha. It says Shri Bhagwan Uvacha. So Krishna and Bhagwan, there is no difference. So let's see what he says in translation and purport. Who can read? Mr. Rohan like to read translation and purport?
Yes, sir.
Please.
Translation: the Supreme Personality of God said, while speaking what is your grief. Those who are wise lament neither for the living nor for the dead. Purport: the Lord at once took the position of the teacher and chastised the student, calling him indirectly a fool. The Lord said, "You are talking like a learned man, but you do not know that one who is learned, one who knows what is body and what is soul, does not lament for any stage of the body, neither in the living nor in the dead condition." As explained in the later chapters, it will be clear that knowledge means to know matter and spirit and the controller of both. Arjuna argued that religious principles should be given more importance than politics or sociology, but he did not know that knowledge of matter, soul, and the supreme is even more important than religious formularies. And because he was lacking in that knowledge, he should not have posed himself as a very learned man. As he did not happen to be very learned man, he was consequently lamenting for something which was unworthy of lamentation. The body is born and is destined to be vanquished today or tomorrow. Therefore, the body is not as important as the soul. One who knows this is actually learned, and for him, there is no cause for lamentation, regardless of the condition of the material body.
Yeah. So this is very important verse, because here Krishna, Supreme Personality of Godhead, is speaking. Before discussing on this verse, just have a overview here. So we completed section 1, which was verses 2.1 to 2.10, where it was saying Arjuna's further doubt and surrender. Now we are entering into section 2, which will be verses from 2.11 to 2.30. It's called Jnana section, like how Krishna will now starts to remove the doubts of Arjuna one by one. So this is the start of this section. And then this section, Krishna will emphasize that how soul is eternal and it never dies, and body is temporary, cannot be saved. So this particular section will refute Arjuna's argument raised for compassion. Like he did not wanted them to be killed, but here Krishna is saying, Krishna will explain, like in the section, how soul is eternal, cannot be killed by any weapon. Like that, he will give many logical reasons about eternality and indestructible nature of the soul, and whereas the material body or material nature is temporary and destructible. So when you understand this, then there should not be any how to say bewilderment. So, and this particular section will explain how one should remain fixed in the prescribed duties and purify oneself by performing those duties, perform this prescribed duty, and along with that the spirituality to realize the eternal self. So this is the very important section. So 2. Ashok Krishna Prabhu, can you bring slide 27? Yeah. So what we saw is Krishna is chastising Arjuna that you are speaking like a learned man, but actually you are a fool. Pragya Vadansya Bhashashe. Pragya means intelligence. Vadan means the speech. Bhashashe means speaking. You are speaking like a learned man, but actually you are not a learned. So this means you are a fool. So Krishna is indirectly chastising Arjuna by saying, actually, you are a fool. Why you are a fool? Because you are lamenting for temporary thing, which is a body, and you are forgetting the eternal thing, which is soul. So one who is learned, one who is really learned and wise, does not lament for temporary things. Rather, they are the seeker of the eternal and permanent things. Here, further, uh, the knowledge is also described. What is knowledge? To know matter, soul, and supreme controller and their interaction. So knowledge is not just the material knowledge, but it also material knowledge plus what is this psychiatrist psychic knowledge and spiritual knowledge and understanding what is a soul. So you have to understand all of. So to for example, sometime if you are understanding something, you say this is not that, this is not that. That is one way of understanding. Is another is this is this, this is this. So two ways. So what is matter? That is not soul. So that's why you have to also understand matter. So soul is not matter. So matter characteristics are like it appear in certain point of time, it stays for some time, then it grows and then diminishes and further and finally disappears. But soul is not like that. It never takes birth, it never has to grow, never undergo any change, never diminishes or never dies. So you have to understand both. Is important to understand in depth. And then more important than just understanding matter and spirit is also to understand the supreme spirit and what is the relationship of the simple soul with the supreme soul. So that is very, very important. That is what is called knowledge. So education is basically not just meant for verbalization, it is meant for transformation. So vidya dadati vinaya, vinaya dadati patratam. So if somebody is having vidya, the knowledge, it gives vinaya. Vinaya means humility, and that humility becomes gives the patratam or yogyata. So qualified to further receive the knowledge, and not only the knowledge but the realized knowledge. And what is realized knowledge means? It leads, when you have a realized knowledge, it leads to transformation of the heart. It's not just verbally, okay, this in that theory, flana theory, dakra theory, but you don't understand the essence. You have to understand the essence. Bhagavad Gita is not just the words for they are written, to show some eloquency of English language, it's not English, Sanskrit language. But these words are true. They are for transformation of the heart, as we'll see how Arjuna will be transformed by getting this real knowledge from Sri Krishna. So education helps us understand which emotions are appropriate and which emotions are not appropriate, which emotions are real and which emotions are illusion. So sometimes it's not that being emotional is bad, but it depends what kind of emotion it is. Based on that, it will be decided whether it's person is emotional or he is in illusion or he is showing some symptoms of ecstasy of due to spiritual love for the Lord. So it's very important to understand. So real education help us to understand the difference between them. And then further in the purport, we are see it's opening for me. There is a word I like to bring here. Yeah. So another important concept to understand is uh, between soul and the gross body, subtle body is the link. So soul is in, you can say they are connected or linked through subtle body. So when this spirit soul goes from one body to another body, the subtle body also goes with it along. And what subtle body is made up of? Mind, intelligence, and false ego. So these three things go with the soul when transmigration is happening from one body to another body. And the link between the subtle body and the gross body is through the life air or pranavayu. Life air is also called ashu or pranavayu. So that's very important. So what happen is when the circulation of these different airs within the body is nicely, they help us. There are 9 different kind of airs within the body. When the circulation of this air is in perfect order, it help us to live healthy and function properly. But when our emotions are agitated, then the breath also become agitated. You might have seen when somebody is very emotional or very angry, or the breath, the intensity and the frequency of the breath changes. So this is another understanding how it is very important to have this complete understanding of this network to be perfectly healthy. When I say healthy, not just physically healthy, but emotionally healthy, psychologically healthy, spiritually healthy. We'll see how more as we go further. We'll be elaborating on this, you can say, points more and more. So now we are in verse 2.12. So before we read 2, 2.12, maybe we should read 2.12. Natvevaham jatu nasam natvaneime janadipa na chaiva na bhavishyama sarve vaya mata param. Another very, very beautiful and important verse. I will ask maybe Repon to read translation and purport. Repon, you are okay reading it?
Yes, Prabhu. Thanks. Okay. Translation. Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. Prabhu, my daughter wants to read Parput somehow. Is it okay?
Yes,
Okay, please, Karuna.
that's very interesting. The children are taking interest in Gita.
In the that
Katha Upanishad,
Katha Upanishad as well in the
Shet-
Shet
Shatashar Upanishad,
Shatashar
Nishad,
Upanishad, it sa- is said that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is
the
the
maintainer
of
immutable
immovable living
entities.
in terms of their different situations according to
Individual
individual work and reaction of work. That supreme personality of Godhead is also by his plenary
portions.
alive in the heart of every living entity. Only saintly persons who can see within and without the same Supreme Lord can actually
Attain
attain to perfect and eternal peace.
We all read the verse. Nityo nityanam chetanas chetananam eko bahunam yavidhati kaman tam atmastam ye nu pashyanti dhira tesham santi shashwati netarisam. That was the verse. So continue from down.
the
Same
Vedic
Vedic truth given to all persons in the world who calls themselves as very learned but factually Godhead's, the Lord's
Mhm.
inter
Oh, the Lord's eternal associate
internal associate
and
and all the kings assembled there remain
eternal
since they individually
existed.
existed in the past and the individual will continue in the future without
Interruptions.
interruptions. Therefore, there are no cause for
Lamentation for anyone.
Yeah, okay. Maybe I'll ask now someone else to continue from the Mayavad theory. Shikha Mataji, like to continue from the Mayavad theory?
So,
Shikha Mataji, Shama Mohini Mataji, like to continue from the Mayavadi theory onwards? Okay. You are on mute, Mataji. We don't hear you. Uttam, you like to read? Maybe she's not there.
Yes, Prabhu, I think.
Yeah, please. The Mayavadi theory.
The Mayavadi theory that after liberation, the individual soul separated by the covering of Maya or illusion will merge into the impersonal Brahman and lose its individual existence is not supported herein by Lord Krishna, the supreme authority. Nor is the theory that we only think of individuality in the conditioned state supported herein. Krishna clearly says herein that in the future also the individuality of the Lord and other, as it is confirmed in the Upanishad, will continue eternally. This statement of Krishna is authoritative because Krishna cannot be subject to illusion. If individuality were not a fact, then Krishna would not have expressed it so much, even for the future. The Mayavadi may argue that individuality spoken of by Krishna is not spiritual but material. Even accepting the argument that individuality is material, then how can one distinguish Krishna's individuality? Krishna affirms Krishna affirms his individuality in the past and confirms his individuality in the future also. He has confirmed his individuality in many ways. An impersonal Brahman has been declared to be subordinate to him. Krishna has maintained spiritual individuality all along. If he is accepted as an ordinary conditioned soul in individual consciousness, then his Bhagavad Gita has no value as authoritative scripture. A common man with all the four defects of human frailty is unable to teach that which is worth hearing. The Gita is above such literature. No mundane compare with the Bhagavad Gita. When one accepts Krishna as an ordinary man, the Gita loses all importance. The Mayavadi argues that the plurality mentioned in this verse is conventional and that it refers to the body. But previous to this verse, such a bodily conception is already condemned. After condemning the bodily conception of the living entity, how was it possible for Krishna to place a conventional proposition on the body again? Therefore, individuality is maintained on a spiritual ground and is thus confirmed by great Acharya like Sri Ramanuja and others. It is clearly mentioned in many places in Gita that This spiritual individuality is understood by those who are devotees of the Lord. Those who are envious of Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead have no bona fide access to the great literature. The non-devotee approach to the teaching of Gita is something like that of a bee licking on a bottle of honey. One cannot have a taste of honey unless one opens the bottle. Similarly, the mysticism of Bhagavad Gita can be understood only by devotees and no one else can taste it. As it is stated in the 4th chapter of the book, nor can the Gita be touched by person who envy the very existence of the Lord. Therefore, the Mayavadi explanation of the Gita is a most misleading presentation of the whole truth. Lord Chaitanya has forbidden us to read commentation made by Mayavadis and once warns that one who takes to such an understanding the Mayavadi philosophy lost all power to understand the real mystery of the Gita. If individuality refers to the empirical universe, then there is no need of teaching by the Lord. The plurality of the individual soul and the Lord is an eternal fact and it is confirmed by Vedas as above mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. So this is another very important verse. This is underlying like how we are all eternal individuals. Krishna is telling to Arjuna that in the past we were existing, presently we are existing, and in future also we will still exist. He's not saying only you and me, but also these kings. Natva Neme Janadipa. Janadipa means the kingdoms, master of Janas. So if that is the case, why should Arjuna lament? That's the main, you can say, the theme for this verse. Arjuna was fearful that what will happen to his relatives, right? And this verse talks about the eternity of soul. Krishna speaks not here eternality of a person by saying that in past we were there, presently we are there, and future will continue to be there. So this is emphasizing the eternality of us. Now let's look at slide 28, which is a prelude to this. I want to bring some of the refutations used in by Krishna in the text 2 point. Maybe we can park that for next time. We just go to the key points in the purpose, slide 29. Because just to explain this itself will take some time. So this here, this is a supporting verse for eternal individuality. It's not that individuality is there for some time and then individuality is lost. The example is given Katha Upanishad and Vatara Upanishad, where it says Nityo Nityanam Chetnas Chetnanam Eka Nam Yuvijdhati Kaman. Like how there is for eternals is Nityo Nityanam Chetnas, he is eternal of eternal beings. So like that there is a verse in Katha Upanishad Svetashmi where it also explain like there is one Nitya and there is multiple Nityas. Okay, so there is one super soul and there are multiple souls and they are always eternal, existing. They are always individual. They never loses their individuality. And further, like Supreme Personality of Godhead is the maintainer of these innumerable living entities. Nityo Nityanam. He is maintaining one Nitya is maintaining so many Nityas. Chetanas Chetananam. He is the consciousness of all these unlimited, you can say, living entities. So that's why it's the maintainer function of the Lord. And how does Lord maintain? Basically maintain as a Vishnu, as a Palanharta, right? Maintains according to our karma, our actions that we are performing by giving us the results according to that. And this is how saintly person understand it and attains the perfect peace. Understand what? Understand one Nitya who is maintaining so many Nityas. When we understand that, that's the peace formula. Like that's also otherwise explained in Bhagavad Gita. Bhoktaram Yagyatapsham Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. Like Krishna is the enjoyer. He is the master of all the lokas. So if you understand that, you get at peace. But when you yourself artificially try to become master, then problem comes. So Supreme Lord, these saintly persons, they can see Supreme Lord within and without. They can see the hand of Supreme Lord in every actions. And then we might have seen this term Mayavad. And Mayavad is a Vad means the philosophy, Maya means illusory. It's a philosophy of illusion. So Mayavad. So here Prabhupada in the purport mentions different prophecies of this philosophy or theory, and then he has given the refutation, like how to counter argue the argument made by Mayavad. So we'll see here one by one. So first mention is like Mayavadis, they say soul is separated from the original soul or the original consciousness, which is the supreme consciousness due to the covering of the Maya or illusion. And when this covering of the Maya or illusion is removed, the soul which is separated from original soul can merge back again into supreme consciousness. It's as if there is a green tree and there are green birds. So these green birds, they enter into the tree and they become the tree. But this logic has a fallacy, because the bird, when it entered the green bird entering the green tree, the bird still remain individual, different from the tree. Even from outside, it may appear as if the bird and tree are one, but that's not the case. And the refutation is given in the verses 2.13 and 2.23. 13 is the next verse itself, where it is explained like soul is unbreakable, cannot be cut into pieces, cannot be divided. So if it's be divided, how it can be, how from one original soul the soul is separated if it cannot be divided, right? So that's refuting this fact that soul can be separated from original body. And second point they bring forward is that I think we discussed both 1 and 2. After the liberation, soul merges or dissolve homogeneously into impersonal Brahman. More or less we touched on this point, but I'll explain a little bit more this also, because it's very important to understand this. So what is the concept of liberation is that after you do dharma, artha, kama, and then you perform them nicely, then based on your dharma, you can be liberated. So that liberation understanding of impersonalist is that the soul merges or dissolves into the Brahmajyoti. And we have, I think, discussed this a couple of times. The Brahmajyoti is nothing but the ray of light coming from the body of the Lord. So their idea is when you are liberated, so Brahma Satya, Jagat Mithya. This Brahman means this light coming from the Lord, that is true. And this Jagat means this material world is false. So that kind of theory is proposed by the Mayavadis. Because why it's false? Because uh, it's temporary. But the real understanding is the Jagat is not false. Jagat is there, the world is there, we can see around us, there is so many things are happening, we cannot say it's false. It is true, but it's temporary. And another thing is, if you think it is false, then why you come to this world, right? To perform. If I say this world is false, then I should reject this world completely. But then we have seen this many times, impersonalist people, they will come and open the hospitals and schools. If you think this world is false, then why open schools and hospitals? And why they say it is false? Because they try, when you try to enjoy and not able to enjoy, you are becoming frustrated. So then it is false. Grapes are sour, right? When the what is that? The fox try to eat the grapes and cannot get the grapes, and then say grapes are sour. Something like that. That's the Mayavadi thinking. But like I already also mentioned, Krishna is saying in this verse translation itself how individuality of soul is never lost. Even after liberation, the soul still remains individual soul, and supreme soul remains supreme soul. There is no merging over there. The individuality is always there. Okay, so that's the refutation for this. And then another thing they say is individuality exists only in a condition. It's a conditional individuality. Like if certain condition is met, then the individuality is met. Otherwise, individuality is destroyed. And what is the condition? The condition is in this material world. Now we are into the temporary illusion. So when this temporary illusion is removed, the condition of this illusion is removed, then we become same as that person, same as the supreme person. And then again, that can be refuted by the fact that Lord individuality and living entities individuality is not only was true in the past or in the present, but it will be true for future also, as Krishna is stating in this verse 2.12. And further, we can see here that by saying that our individuality will like the soul will dissolve or merge into the super soul or the cosmic consciousness, the reason why they say that is because now this world is miserable, but when you go and when you dissolve in the cosmic consciousness, which is the super soul, or this um, not super soul really, but the Brahma Jyoti, then all your miseries will disappear. That is true. You don't have any miseries over there. There is existence is there, no miseries. But there is a problem over there. The problem is they are denying the existence of personality, because when everything merge and become the light, so when the light means it's all just the light effulgence, but personality is not there, no form is there, and individuality is not there, because the soul and super soul or this consciousness uh, is merged with the cosmic consciousness and they become one. So individuality is lost. So that is the flaw in this philosophy. So if that's the reason Krishna is saying specifically that our individuality was true in the past, is true now, and it will be true in the future also. I will give you some example to understand it. I know it's not an easy concept. So for example, in conventional way, when you are hungry, what do you say? I am hungry, right? You don't say my stomach is hungry. We don't differentiate that way between the body and the soul. In the same way, we cannot differentiate between body and soul of the Krishna. It's the same personality. Krishna is never put under illusion, because Mayavadi, what they are saying, if you become same as him, so this means you are him, right? If the only difference between you and him is the illusion, you remove the illusion, you are same as him. But Krishna is never put into illusion, neither now, neither in the past, and nor in the future he will be put in the illusion. Krishna is ever liberated. Krishna is never put under any condition. Whereas living entities, we can be sometime under condition, sometime we can be liberated, sometime we can be bound, sometime we are free. But Lord is always free, cannot be bound. God is transcendental, eternal, individual. God is transcendental, eternal, and individual. Three things are very important. God does not lose his individuality by merging with us. We don't become like him. We may have qualities same as the Lord. Like Lord also is eternal. We as a spirit soul are also eternal. Lord is supremely congruent, supremely intelligent, and we also have this quality of knowledge. That's why we have so many college. That's why we always like to inquire, understand the things from where it is coming, because we are the sample of the God. God has these qualities, so we have these qualities: eternity, knowledge, and blissfulness. Lord is always blissful. We are sometimes blissful, sometimes we are not. Why it is there? Because we, due to our being prone to illusion, sometimes we are happy, sometimes we are not happy. But when you get out of this illusion completely, then you can become happy, then you can attain the same nature as the Krishna. But now since we are unlimitedly small, we can be contaminated easily. Like a rainwater, when it is pouring from the sky, it's pure. But a drop of rainwater, when it fall on the muddy ground, it becomes contaminated. Same way, as long as we are attached to Krishna, we are attached to God. When I say attached, does not mean merging. Attached in the consciousness, in the emotion, in the thought process, in if we are attached like that to Krishna, in synchronized, like thinking same way, then we stay pure. Moment we detaches from the Krishna, the impurity starts to come. The Maya starts to attack. The illusion starts to come. So if Krishna is in illusion, then the what is the value of Bhagavad Gita, right? Because Bhagavad Gita is spoken by Krishna and is giving you this knowledge. So what is the validity of the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita? So that's another way how you can refute this philosophy. And I think we covered this. Individuality is material and not spiritual. So what they are saying is, I think we covered it, but I'll explain what does it mean. Individuality is material means uh, when you are existing materially, you think yourself this body, you are under the illusion. Till that time, you are individual person, X, Y, and Z. But as soon as your illusion is removed, this material covering is removed, then you become spiritual being and you become one. But that's not true, as I explained how Krishna has confirmed his not only his individuality but also the individuality of the soul. And also we gave the example like how if Krishna can come under illusion, then what is the use of studying Bhagavad Gita? What is the use of all listening to me if the knowledge is illusory knowledge? Krishna never comes under illusion. Illusion means Maya. Krishna is not Mayadhi. Krishna is not Mayadhin. Krishna is Mayadhish. Is the master of the Maya. Is the master of the illusion. He cannot come under control of his energy. He's always supremely independent. And I think this point is same. Only plurality mentioned in this verse refers to body or material things. And Krishna already condemned the bodily conception in the previous verse, right? Where he says, what was the previous verse? Anybody remember the previous verse? Verse 11. What were we discussing? Verse 11. That you are speaking for, like a learned person and you are lamenting for something which is not worthy of grief. And what is that something which is not worthy of grief? This body, which is temporary. So that bodily conception, Krishna has already condemned. And then further in the purport, Prabhupada mentioned, like, who can understand Bhagavad Gita? Bhagavad Gita is an open secret. When it was spoken on the battlefield, everybody was listening, both sides, Kauravas and Pandavas. Everybody was listening. But not everybody was understanding it to the same extent. Because to understand, one has to have a favorable mood and mood of a devotee. One should be devoted, humbly submitted to the Lord. Only then he can understand. He should have a right attitude, right mood. He should have a how to say right attitude. Only then one can understand the Gita. And attitude is also described, like I said, Vidya Dadati Vinay. One has to be humble. One has to be submissive, inquiring in not in a challenging mood, but in a mood to understand the truth. Only then one can understand. One has to become a devotee of the Lord. Like Krishna will explain further uh, to Arjuna, like I'm explaining this science to you because you are my friend, you are my devotee. That's why. And the secret between us can be understood only by non-envious person. If you are envious of Krishna, you cannot understand it. So one has to be free from envy also. Like Bhagavatam also, Srimad Bhagavatam is another book that we study. Second verse also explains what is the qualities of a person to understand spiritual science. He has to be nirmatsar, free from envy. What to speak of free from envy, even the tendency to envy should not be there. Then you can understand the Gita. So Gita has to be understood in humble, submissive mood, with the right attitude, with a mood to serve the spiritual master and not in a challenging mood. And then we saw how the Mayavad philosophies, like we saw in the refutation above, how it's not true. It's taking only one side of the truth, but not the complete truth. Like in the Vedas, there is a mention Lord does not have hand, but still he can do work. He does not have legs, still he walk. He does not have eyes, still he sees. They take only that part of the verse, but the verse following that explains he does not have legs like us, the material legs, does not have hand like us, the material hand, does not have eyes like us. He has spiritual eyes. From his eyes he can eat. Angani yasya shakilendri avriti manti pashyanti panti kalyanti chiram jaganti. There is a prayers by Brahmaji where is explained from each of his limb he can perform the action of any other limb. That's not the case with us. I cannot eat with my eyes. I have a nice food on my plate. I cannot just keep looking at it and eat it. No, neither I can grow my offspring like fish. Fish, it look at the offspring and grow them, does not feed them any food. Just by looking at them, meditating on them, it's able to grow. But we don't have those capabilities. But Lord can do anything. He just through his how to say, through his nose he can create Brahma. Through his navel, sorry, he can create Brahma. He does not need the help of a female to create any offspring. So all his senses are perfect, complete in themselves. Each of his sense can perform the action of any other sense. That's not the case with us. So this Mayavad philosophy, that's why it's like you have a bottle of honey. It's like licking it from outside. And the real process is you don't lick the honey from outside. If you want to relish the honey, you have to open the bottle and then relish the honey. And you need help of some spiritual authority to open that bottle, which is a guru or the sadhus or the sages, so that you can relish this nectar there in the Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and the Vedic literatures. Lord Chaitanya specifically forbade us about Mayavad because Mayavad is Asat Shastra. It's not a true philosophy. It was needed for a particular time, under a particular circumstances. There was a particular purpose why this philosophy was given. It was given to drive Buddhists out of the India, because at one point of the time, practically whole India became Buddhist. Why it happened was because Prince Siddharth take to Buddhism, and that was the thing over there. That time, whatever was the religion of the king, he will try to also, put it on others. So when Siddharth or Gautam Buddha, when he became the king, the Buddhism spread very much, very widely in the India. But the Buddhism, the fallacy with the Buddhist philosophy is it says it rejects the Vedas, and if you reject Veda, you become Nastik. Vedana manya bodh hoila Nastik. If you does not believe in Vedas, become Buddha, Bodh or Nastik. On the other hand, Krishna is Buddha himself. There is no difference between Buddha and Krishna. So Krishna is coming as a Buddha. He has a specific purpose, and the purpose for him that time was because people were using Vedic scriptures to eat meat. In Vedic scriptures, there are various sacrifices are there. So Brahmanas, they become contaminated, polluted. So on the name of Vedic scriptures, they were quoting, referring the Vedas where these different sacrifices are mentioned, and they were eating meat on the name of sacrifice. So to stop that animal killing on the large scale, Nindati Yagya Vidhe Jatam, like that's why Lord Buddha appeared to stop this unnecessary violence. And to now Buddha they take people away from the Vedas, or they made them Nastik, because now whenever somebody will bring Vedas, Buddha says, I don't believe in Vedas. Ahimso Parama Dharma, right? So he did not give too much philosophy, Buddha. He speak few lines only, but his followers have made uh, written volumes of book based on the Vedic knowledge. So one side he is rejecting Vedas and they are accepting Vedas. And I will not go into detail into that. That's not the point. But the reason I was saying for the Mayavad was to drive the Buddhists out, because Mayavad is one sense bringing you one step closer to the Vedas by accepting the Vedic authority, but it's in an illusion form. Like somebody has rejected completely the Vedas, it's hard to bring them to the highest principle of Vedic philosophy, which is the bhakti. So there is a gradual process. So that gradual process, that's why Lord Shiva has a Sankaracharya. he propounded this philosophy of the Mayavad, and Shiva himself, Shankaracharya himself propounded the Mayavad philosophy. But if you see his prayers, Bhaj Govindam, Mudmate, he's still, because internally he's a devotee. You have to understand, he's Lord Shiva only, Param Vaishnava. He wants to bring people back to worshipping the Lord. So he says, Bhaj Govindam, Mudmate. Though he's giving one side is Ashat Shastram. Lord Shiva is saying to Parvati in Bhagavatam that in Kali Yuga how I will appear and spread this Ashat Shastra, Mayavad Asasta Shastra. I will come that myself. So that Lord Shiva, but since he is a devotee, is also saying Bhaj Govindam Mudmate. So with that, I like to end. If someone has one or two quick questions, we can take it. Sorry, I went little over on this particular verse because I think it needed explanation. It has confused many people in India.
Prabhu, Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, I have 2 or 3 questions, but I'll try to ask one question this time, and next week I'll go for with the next questions.
Sure.
So with 2.8, when we were discussing 2.8, so we were discussing about the extent, I mean, the problems that people are facing. So to what extent that verse actually answer the problems which people are facing now, and you told us that we have to look for a purpose and a meaning for a life. And how does a non-Hindu look at it? Like, what is a non-Hindu's perspective in identifying Krishna? Because in order to get rid of all these problems, we need to understand that Krishna is a supreme God, and we need to take the shelter of shelter of Krishna, under the direction of a bona fide guru. So, but how does a non-Hindu look at this issue? How
Yeah.
can he understand that? Because he has no knowledge of the scripture what we have access to, and he doesn't have a bona fide, again, spiritual master for them. So how can he approach it, a non-Hindu especially? So this
Right.
was my first question, Prabhu.
Yeah. Very nice question. So the how to say uh, the principle is same. The details may be different. So let's see how. When I say principle is same, so principle is when you cannot solve the problem on your own, you need help of somebody who is capable of solving that problem. Now that person may be guru if you coming from Hindu faith, or that person may be prophet, or that person may be messenger of the God, whosoever it may be. Either Krishna come personally or he send his bona fide representative, and Krishna makes sure that does not matter which part of the world you are in, that this knowledge to attaining him is always there. So for example, non-Hindus, they are called Abrahamic religion. Ours is Vedic religion. So Abrahamic religion, they have Bible is there, Quran is there. So they can take shelter of Quran and Bible and those persons who are teaching the teachings of Holy Quran or Holy Bible. So they have the process also. Now the only difference is um, uh, these Vedic knowledge or Vedic school, it's much more detailed. It caters to all kind of people, and it has more detailed explanations versus Bible and Quran. I don't want to say that Bible and Quran are how to say are not sufficient. They are sufficient. To understand that you are the servant of the God, and you have to understand and you have to serve the God. That concept is there in the Bible and Quran also. But their focus is more on moral instructions and the impersonal feature of the God. They don't go to personal and relationship aspect with the Lord. So that gradually will come. But you have to take one step. So worst is the person who is atheist, right? Better than atheist is a theist. And then in the theist, it depends what kind of theist he is, like which gradation he is. So there are, according to different level of consciousness, people approach different authorities. Even within the Vedas, for example, those who like to eat meat, they can approach goddess Kali, or different, or those who want material benefits, they can approach demigods. So that is there. It's not that essence of bhakti is very. It's the only thing which is explained in the Vedic scriptures. Does that answer to some extent your question, or you need more explanation on this?
Yes, Prabhu. But still, because the other scriptures, I mean, they promote meat, I mean, animal sacrifice. So, which is again against to our
Mhm.
principle. So, definitely, as you said, there is a different set of levels altogether. So, again, the salvation or the term which we called as liberation is again different again for these aspects, right, Prabhu?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
that those differences are there. The details may be different, but the principle, these three principles are always there. Like to understand that you have a relationship with the God, and you have to understand, you have to accept the supremacy of the God, and then the process to to develop your relationship with the God, that is there more or less in even in these scriptures like Bible and Quran.
Yeah, then one person can
So as far as your meat sacrifice, when you said like they have this sacrifice is there, that sacrifice is there in the Vedic literatures also.
yeah.
So it's not that by sacrifice itself means what? It's not saying meat eating. Meat eating and sacrifice is very different. Even in, for example, Quran, they say if you have to eat an animal, you have to do halal. You cannot eat animal here and there. So for halal, there is a specific process is there. They cannot just eat any meat here and there. You have to cut throat like this, so all the blood from the body of that animal comes out, and there are specific mantras that you are chanting that, right? And it's something. It's not saying, Quran is not saying that you should eat meat. It's if you want to eat meat, then you have to do sacrifice. Like there is a condition. If you want to do this, then do it through sacrifice. Don't just eat like that. If you uh, for vegetables, for example, or milk, there is nothing like that you have to do halal. There is nowhere it is saying that you have to halal the vegetables, because there is. But whenever there is animal killing, Quran also is aware that it's a sinful thing. But since people were accustomed to that, so somehow gradually and slowly you have to bring them to higher consciousness. So first they have to develop the faith in the Quran itself. So when they follow the proper process, as mentioned in the Quran for the halal, gradually their heart is also getting purified, provided they follow the instructions mentioned in Quran or Bible. And same thing, even in our Vedic literatures, we do have a mention of animal killing is there. The sacrifices are there. But like for Kali, you have to offer them the goat to the Kali on a fortnight moon, and then there are certain specific mantras. And one of the mantra meaning is, this life I am cutting you, next life you can also cut me.
Yeah.
So when you say every time I am cutting you, this time, next time you can cut me also. Someday you will get the sense, oh, I should not do this, right?
Yeah, it is it looks like it is totally misinterpreted like these days. Yeah, Prabhu, shall I go with the next question, or do you want me to postpone it for the next one next
Maybe
week?
we can take next time, since it's already 5:30.
Yeah. Thank you so
But
much, Prabhu.
please
That
keep
really
your
helped.
questions, and if anybody else have the questions,
Yeah, Hare
please
Krishna
bring
Prabhu.
question.
Can I
Yes.
ask a question? Yeah. Like in 2.8, as per Prabhupada's purport, it's mentioned uh, like to be a spirit guru or a spiritual master, like
Mhm.
though he might knows the not only the material like material qualification, like as you said PhD or whatever other knowledge, as well as he mentioned about the he might know the Vedas, all the four Vedas also,
Mhm.
like he's expert of Bhagavad Gita knowledge, but
Right.
but his realization or something. So how we know he's really a actual guru or Vaishnava? As Prabhupada mentioned, to become a spiritual master, he master, like if he's a Vaishnava, Krishna conscious, how we know really like he's like to like like we need to take like diksha from the guru. So how we know like he's real spiritual guru or something?
Or not. Yeah. In that very purport, Prabhupada mentioned that even if somebody may be very scholarly Brahmana, expert in Vedic knowledge, he is unfit to become a spiritual master if he is not a Vaishnava. Or he is not Vaishnava means expert in the science of Krishna consciousness. That's how Prabhupada mentioned. A person may be born in a family of a lower caste, right? A Vaishnava Guru Nasyat, Vaishnava Sopacho Guru. Even if he is a dog eater, born in a family of dog eater, he can still become a Guru if he is a Vaishnava. So the principle is very the most important quality of a Guru is he has to be devotee of the Lord, right? He has to be bhakta. He cannot be yogi, bhogi, or rogi. He has to be bhakta. First qualification. He should be 24 hours immersed in Krishna. Prabhupada says Guru means 24 hours immersed in Krishna. He's talking of only Krishna, about Krishna, thinking of Krishna, meditating about Krishna, 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 nothing else. Or Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he is well versed in scriptures. Not only well versed in scriptures, but he is well versed in the conclusive understanding of the scriptures. There's Nana Shastra Bahu Vakya Hoye. There are so many scriptures and so many things they say that can delude us, but he should know conclusively the essence of the scriptures and able to convey that essence to his disciple. And Guru should have control. Nectar of Instruction mentioned first verse himself. Vacho vegam mansa krodh vegam jiva udar pasta vegam etan vegam yo vishet sadhira sarvan apimam prithvim sasisha. So one who has control over his vacha, what he is speaking, Pacho Vegam, Mansa Krodh Vegam, what he is thinking, Krodha, like he has control over the anger. Jiva, like what he is eating, he has control over that. He does not eat anything here and there, eat only Krishna Prasadam. Udaropast Vegam, right? Control over his belly, genitals. He is completely sense control. So this is another qualification of the Guru. So there are like that, so many qualities of the Gurus are there, but these are some of the most important. And Guru, another important quality is Guru has to follow his another Guru. So Guru, 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 like that there is a chain, disciplic succession. You cannot get knowledge from here and there. The knowledge has to come from a bona fide source. So Guru should accept a bona fide parampara, bona fide disciplic succession, and a bona fide spiritual master. So first Guru is a disciple, and then he is a Guru. He is disciple to some Guru, and then he is Guru to you. So these are some of. I hope it clears, but if not, then we can maybe discuss in person after the call. I don't want to hang everybody else. 5:35. And if you have further questions, definitely we can take it next week. Next week when we discuss, first thing we'll do is just take your question answers from this section. So please note them and let's discuss them. All right. Anybody like to add some comment to what I give answers so far from the devotees there?
I want to add quick comment. So Lakshmi Mataji was asking about how non-Hindus can access. So if you
Yes.
see Bhagavad Gita, there is no mention of word Hindu in whole Bhagavad Gita. So that means this Bhagavad Gita is a universal scripture. It's not just for Hindus. It's for everyone.
Yeah.
And then a genuine seeker who is genuinely, we have seen that no matter what faith he is from, or if he is white colored, black colored, or what color of body, he will find it if he genuinely searches for this. And we have seen in our ISKCON also, now this Bhagavad Gita is now read in US, Canada, Europe, everywhere, and it's translated in 80 languages. So genuine seeker will find it, because what happens if he's following the faith, Abrahamic faith, so they are not satisfied because there is not much spiritual understanding in those faiths. They are, so one who doesn't get satisfied, then he looks for, like, his search for spiritual enlightenment continues, and then once he gets Bhagavad Gita, and then he gets satisfied there. So in our ISKCON itself, we have seen many people like that who got access to Bhagavad Gita, and then we also distribute this knowledge by giving this book to everyone, right? So we do book distribution to get this access of Bhagavad Gita to everyone.
Thank you, Prabhu. I think from the book distribution, I I like to mention we are going. Very important thing I should have mentioned that before, but I'll take maybe half a minute to mention about it. We are having a Bhakti Vinod Thakur book marathon. So we try to, during this lockdown period, we are trying to convey this message or distribute this knowledge of, based on the teachings of Srila Prabhupada taken from Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam. Based on that, Prabhupada has written more than 60 books. We have them translated in different languages. We are trying to give it to different people. So if you like to help us in this cause by taking some of these books, by giving to your loved one or dear one, or if you want a copy for yourself, please contact myself or Ashoka Krishna Prabhu. So we are having this marathon till 20th of June. So with that, I'd like to end today's session. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.